This is music, and this is still the summer of Simon, or maybe the winter of Wang. Welcome to another Summer of Simon video. This is a sub-series in the First Impressions series on this channel. So in this sub-series, I follow up on an overwhelming VCLT that was sent to me by none other than Simon from the Pie Face channel. Go and check out his channel if you like your extreme metal. So he sent me an overwhelming, very generous VCLT with a handful of cassette tapes and more than 40 CDs in it. So I'm following up on this VCLT, sharing with you my impressions of these CDs. I have a handful to talk about this time, so let's get down to business. First, Queen, Made in Heaven. I actually hadn't heard this one before because, to me, Queen kind of ended when Freddie Mercury passed away tragically, and extra tragically because a couple of years later, medical science had advanced to the point that an HIV diagnosis was no longer a death sentence. But so I never really listened to this one. I knew some of the songs because they were also on a greatest hits box set that Just Keach was nice enough to send me in a VCLT. So go and check out his channel. So it was actually kind of nice to have some songs that I could recognize on here. So this does sound like a Queen album, but not 100% like a Queen album. As far as I understand, it was put together from material that Freddie Mercury had recorded and written and stuff, and he had asked the rest of the band to make sure that it got completed and released to the world. It was important to him. So in a way, this kind of fulfills a dying man's last wish, or one of his last wishes. So there's a certain beauty to that, I think. But it's also kind of weird to listen to it because it was released after he had passed away. I will say, nice to hear his voice. He's one of my favorite singers of all time. I have a lot of favorite singers of all time, but not in any particular order. My top 5, it would be Freddie Mercury, Rob Halford, Bruce Dickinson, Ronnie James Dio, and a young Jeff Tate. So now you also know what kind of singing I tend to like. Fantastic voice. His voice does sound great on here. There are some rocking songs, but they don't have the gusto and bravado of, earlier Queen albums. And you have quite a lot of more emotional ballads on here. Kind of makes sense, I think, given the situation under which this was created. And it is also kind of, you hear there's a song called Let Me Live. There's a song called My Life Has Been Saved. It's kind of strange to listen to songs with those titles written by a dying man. It is a bit weird, but like I said, there's a certain beauty to the whole idea. So it sounds like a Queen album, but not quite. You do have some epic songs, but they don't quite have that indulgent, epic feel of early Queen songs. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I checked this one out, and I will definitely listen to it every now and then. It is a real Queen album to me, but still not 100%, if you know what I mean. Okay, up next, Rage, Beyond the Wall. This a different style of music. So Rage, fantastic band, but very difficult to keep up with because they have a massive discography. My favorite Rage album is Trapped. They started out, if we count the Avenger album as well, they made 2 albums under the band name Avenger. And the first couple of Rage albums, kind of just straight up heavy metal, and then they became more of a power metal band, and then more of a symphonic metal band, and they've done hard rock, and you name it. This one here, this EP or mini CD as it says, It's more of a power thrash thing to me. The guitar tone is pretty punchy. You have some thrashy riffs, also some power metal stuff. I really like this. I think this is great. Of course, it has the Rage signature sound in the vocals, very unique vocals, um, and I really like the vocals. So this one was great. I liked listening to it. It has like 6 tracks on it. Uh, Light into the Darkness, that's an acoustic version, so that's a little bit different. But the other 5 ones are, punchy metal songs. The 5th one is called Last Goodbye, but they forgot the E in goodbye, or maybe it's intentional, who knows. Good stuff though. Now, something different again, Seether, Disclaimer 2. So as far as I understand, Seether um, r/were, don't know if they're still active, but it's a South African band, I think, formed in 1999. Never heard this band before, but I kind of had the idea that they were kind of a 2000s college rock, teen angst alternative rock band, and I think that's partially true, but the style on here is much more inspired by, to my ears, 90s grunge. It sounds like a grunge band who had traveled forward in time, checked out some of the modern, late 90s, early 2000s college rock, and then gone back in time and written some music, and then traveled back forward in time and released it. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is there's a little bit of they missed the bus on here, because it sounds like something that should have been released in the 90s. This one has some pretty decent songs on here, I would say. Kind of a mix of let's say, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, maybe a little bit of, Creed and that kind of post-grunge stuff. So, for example, there's a song called Pride on here, which is pretty heavy. I quite like that song. And you have some other songs that are interesting. They have a certain level of harshness to them. But for the most part, it sounds a little bit too much like a 90s grunge album. And I was never really a big grunge fan. I love Nevermind and Bleach and the Danish grunge band Boghandle, but that's about it. All the other grunge bands, they didn't really appeal that much to me. I acknowledge that, for example, Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, fantastic musicianship, it just didn't appeal to me for some reason. And that's probably why this one is just decent to me. But it has some strong songs and, overall kind of enjoyable. This one to me, on the other hand, another Seether album, Finding Beauty in Negative Spaces. Fantastic artwork, I will say. But this one is much, much more meh to me. This one sounds much more like Nirvana meets maybe more Soundgarden meets 2000s teen angst college rock, so it doesn't do a whole lot to me. It also seems like they're trying to be edgelords a bit, dropping some F-bombs and sexual innuendos and all that stuff, but still not edgy enough to actually include the F-bombs in the song titles. There's a song called FMLYHM, which is short for Fuck Me Like You Hate Me. Why not just call the song that? That would be kind of edgy. I don't think it's a great song. I think it's kind of a dumb song, to be honest. But I'm sure a lot of people liked it. So, yeah, this one is a bit of a weak release to me. Doesn't resonate with me. I'm sure it has its fans, and I'm sure they like it, and that's great. But just didn't do it for me. There's more Seether. One Cold Night. This is interesting too. It has a DVD, by the way. Haven't watched it. Just full disclosure, but I listened to the audio CD, and this is kind of like an acoustic concert, and it reminded me a lot of the MTV Unplugged concerts from the 90s, which I have to be honest, I never really liked those either. They were very popular in the 90s. MTV had all the grunge bands. I know Nirvana did it. and Pearl Jam did it, and a lot of the other 90s alternative rock bands did unplugged. They did acoustic concerts, and they mildly reworked their electrified songs into acoustic versions, but never really enough for me. So it just sounded like songs that were composed to be electrified, um, performed acoustically, never worked for me. The Pearl Jam one, I think, was actually the the one I the one I enjoyed out of all of them. But this reminds me of those concerts. So again, kind of maybe they missed the bus. It was a 90s phenomenon. Um, I know there are other bands who've done something similar later, but they reworked the songs enough that they became interesting in the acoustic versions. And that's not what I get from this, to be honest. But it was an interesting listen, and it was kind of, in a way, nice to be reminded of those youthful days of the 90s and all the stuff I didn't like in the 90s. Just kidding. Up next, Severe Torture. And this one is called Feasting on Blood. As you can see, it's a promo. That is why the inserts and all that stuff is just Xerox copies. I will say this looks much better in the black and white version than the colored version, so that's a win. So this is technical death metal, kind of brutal death metal, but neither too technical nor too brutal. So it's actually pretty cool. You have even some kind of death metal groovy parts every now and then. You have lots of riffs, and that's what I like about this. Like, you have riffs, and you have some pretty impressive musicianship. The vocals are kind of your monotonous death growls, maybe in the vein of Frank Mullen, but it works with this kind of music. So I actually quite enjoyed this. Fun story. I once had a colleague who was also obviously a university teacher, and he was a Severe Torture fan, so he had a t-shirt that said Severe Torture, and I always liked the idea of somebody teaching young people, and he has a t-shirt that says Severe Torture, because I'm sure they thought that the teaching was kind of like severe torture. I don't know, it's just a fun story. But this is good stuff, I like it. And up last, Shadows Fall, and it's called The Art of Balance, and this one has a CD-ROM too, which I haven't checked out, but I've listened to the audio CD. So Shadows Fall are considered a metalcore band, but they are probably one of the most thrashy metalcore bands. I mean, this album to me is more of a modern thrash metal album than a metalcore album, and I quite enjoyed it for the thrashy parts. You do have the vocals are kind of more like modern metalcore-ish, so they were a bit, I can take him or leave him. And you do have some more like metalcore, more like melodic metalcore popping up every now and then, but not too much for me. So I actually quite enjoyed this one. I liked it. And I think I have to now rebuy some Shadows Fall CDs that I used to have that I got rid of. Because, like most of you know, I'm not a big fan of metalcore. Nothing against metalcore per se. Metalcore musicians or metalcore fans just doesn't appeal that much to me. But there's some metalcore bands that I do like, and that apparently includes Shadows Fall, because they're so thrashy. So there you go. Do check out these things and make up your own opinion if you want to. Again, thanks to Simon for sending me that overwhelming VCLT. Thanks for watching.